Welcome back. This is video lesson 4 of our 8-lesson series of the 8 lessons lupus taught me from surviving to thriving with autoimmune diseases. I'm Callie Ray, and this is the book I wrote about my transformation, what I'm calling my first transformation now, because as you know, COVID happened, 2020 happened. We had so much chaos and stress that I have found myself back in my pre-transformation caterpillar days, crawling around munching rather than thriving and being true to who I am born to be. And so, as I decided it was time for me to reclaim, as we're dealing with what's our new normal, we're kind of coming up with these new definitions of what our society and what our schools and our work look like. And I just decided enough of that. My new normal is going to be my transformed self, which is thriving with my autoimmune diseases rather than surviving and suffering with them, because I have put on 50 pounds this year and have pain that I haven't had in decades, since my first transformation. I have stress and depression and skin. I mean, all 3 of my autoimmune diseases have been talking to me this last 9 months. And I know better. I know how to put it in bay. I know how to get back to thriving. And I just haven't been doing it because there's been no routine, no schedule. Everything's been so chaotic. So when I decided that I was going to reclaim my thrive and get my vitality back and put these autoimmune flare-ups to bed, I realized it was kind of selfish of me to do it by myself because I've done it before. And I know I'm not the only person out there struggling with this. That's why I wrote the book, and that's why we were on our Change Your Story presentations and doing the book tours around the country, because I know that you need this information. And so even though I don't really want to get in front of the camera right now because I'm not looking my best, I'm not feeling my best, it's necessary, and I know that you feel the same way. And so I am doing this journey with you, and I hope that you're doing the work that goes along with each of these lessons to be because there's no magic in it. It's work. It's deep work. But today's lesson, I kind of feel like we've already had a little insight into, because today is health is number 1. And if we got nothing else out of this pandemic, we now know that health is number 1. Because what happens? I've been preaching this for the last 5 years since I finished my transformation, wrote the book, and have been telling people that there's a better way. I've been preaching health is number 1, right? The story, the analogy that I use when I'm doing the presentation is that, if you're flying, anybody flown lately? Well, back when we were flying, think of your last flight, and the flight attendant always has to do, before you take off, they always run through the emergency pre-check and let you know where the equipment is, and in the event of an emergency, or in the event that the cabin loses pressure, the oxygen mask will drop down, and you put it on yourself, and then you take care of the people around you. Well, why do you have to put it on yourself first? That seems selfish. I don't have time to do that. Common sense, if you don't put it on yourself, you're going to be passed out and not able to help the child that's with you. Well, that kind of happened with COVID, didn't it? All of a sudden, our health was at risk. We couldn't go to work. We couldn't see our loved ones. We couldn't congregate. We couldn't worship. Why? Because we didn't have our health. Because there was fear of losing our health. So, today's lesson is pretty short because really, we've just lived through it. If this pandemic doesn't make you prioritize your health as number one, nothing will. Quit now. Because if you don't see the value of your health after the entire world has been shut down because of health, I can't get through to you. You've got to see the connection. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how much time you have. It doesn't matter how big your family is, how little your family is. None of that matters. How much they depend on you. If you don't have your health, you can't help them. So understanding, getting rid of the excuses, because this is another one of those where I think culturally we kind of get, especially as a mom, as a busy mom, as a professional mom, we get accolades. We get badges of honor for the more busy we are. You know, the more service we do, the bigger our paycheck, the higher our title. You know, the accomplishments of our children, how many extracurricular activities we can take them to in a week. All of these things give us like status and badges of honor, and we post them on social media and tell everybody how wonderful it is. It's not wonderful, it's crap. Because it's all at the expense of your health. And if it's not true, you wouldn't be here. You know it's true. You have to take care of yourself. It's not selfish. You're not too busy. It's not expensive. It's a priority. It's a choice. Choices are free. Now, granted, we've had some of our choices, some of our freedoms have been changed this year. We don't have. So now the rest of the world is starting to experience what we've experienced for a really long time. If our autoimmune diseases are flaring up and we're so exhausted that we can't participate in the activities we want to, or because we're in bed, or because we can't get out of the bathroom, it depends on what your autoimmune is, but it all impacts your quality of life and the things that you've been able to participate in, just like COVID. So the whole rest of the world is now experiencing what we have been experiencing all along. And it's time to take control of it. It's time to put yourself first. It's time for you to take time for self-care, to make it okay. That our badges of honor don't come from all of the busies and all of the other things that we do for everyone else. Now, I'm not saying don't do those things. I do those things. I get joy out of doing those things. As do you, because if we didn't, we wouldn't. But you can't do it at the expense of your health. You can't use your disease as a way out, as an excuse, okay? For years, when I would have a flare, I would go to work, I would come home and crash, and I would continue to work until I would get so sick, I would finally get an infection. I would get the staph infection that would just be nasty and so painful, and I would be so sick, physically sick, from an actual acute infection, which was the underlying cause of was my autoimmune disease, because it compromised my immune system because it's busy fighting all this other stuff, and then when an actual infection comes in, I've got nothing left. So then I would call in sick for work. Then I would take time off. Then I would call in somebody to help me. It took me decades of living. I didn't realize I was living with autoimmune because I didn't have a label at that time. But when I look back, I lived with it for decades. And it was my way to say no. It was my way to slow down. I would not slow down until my body made me slow down because I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. And then it would take me weeks to be able to get back to my full capacity. And I would argue for years I didn't have my full capacity. For years I was struggling and surviving. And that's why it was so important to me when I cracked the code, if you will, and realized that there is a better way, and you don't have to be in that cycle. You can break the cycle. But the only way you break the cycle of autoimmune disease, flare-ups, is making your health a priority and getting real about it, going through these lessons that we're talking about. And as you make your health a priority and not use it as, and I'm not saying, this was never intentional. It was never intentional. But your body is trying to tell you something. Listen to it now and find out what it needs now before you're in a flare, before you're in a crisis. And that's what put me where I am now, is I didn't have any before, right? We were sailing along and then boom, fell off the cliff, and the stress and the chaos was so immense. I wasn't prepared for it, just like you weren't prepared for it. None of us were prepared for it. But now I am. Now we've had time. We can pull it together. We know what's going on. We know how to cope with it, and we know what the world is doing with its new normal. And I break it out. SAD is the standard American diet and lifestyle, and WOW is the transformed living healthy lifestyle. And so I don't have a problem stepping away from that standard American diet, stepping away from that standard American lifestyle, stepping away from the stress and the chaos. That's not hard for me to do because that's what I've done, and that's why I thrive. And so I'm teaching you how to do it. So it's okay for you to say, nope, my health is number one. And I am not going to allow you to make me feel guilty or selfish or shamed for feeling like I need to take care of myself. So if I need to take a bath with the door shut and nobody can bother me, I'm going to do it. If I need to spend more money on better quality food, I'm going to do it. If I need to go for a walk instead of fix dinner for my husband, I'm gonna do it. You need to do what you need to do. Now, those other things can all happen, but you've got to put your oxygen mask on first. That is the only way that you are going to be able to thrive with autoimmune disease, is to make your health number one, and do not let anybody tell you that your health is not valuable, is not important. And I really feel like with COVID, that's maybe something that we've learned as a culture. We really do understand how important health is, and that if you don't have your health, nothing else matters. The economy doesn't matter, family doesn't matter, church doesn't matter, school doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you're sick, you can't go, okay? So that is today's lesson, and that's your homework this week, is to make sure that you do something for you, and that you make sure that you're creating boundaries and systems. For me, I'll tell you mine, I have my power up and my power down routine that help me get my mindset straight and help me have my priorities so that I know what my top 3 priorities are. I have one for me, one for my family, and one for work. A personal, a work, and a family goal for the day. And that helps me set my priorities so that I make sure that my health is number one. My mental health, my physical health, and my spiritual health. So I have that in there, and then I plug in those things that help me. The food, the exercise, the meditation, the sleep, okay? Those things are critical to your health, and if you do not make them a priority, they will fall by the wayside, because that's who we are. If they hadn't, you wouldn't be here today. You would not be in this struggling. If you had health as number one priority, you never would have fallen into this autoimmune, okay? I truly believe that. Something in one of these 8 lessons, you may not be as big of a mess as I was. It may not take you all 8 of them. Maybe you only resonate with 4 or 5 of them. But all 8 of them, if something is falling out, that's why you're having a flare and coming back up into this autoimmune surviving and suffering. Okay? So this week, your job is to create a prioritization and make sure that everybody around you understands that you're going to take care of you so that you can be around to take care of them. And so that when you're around to take care of them, you're worth it, you're quality, you feel good, you can participate because you're not hurting or depressed or exhausted. Okay? All right, I'll see you next week with lesson 5.